Is from Fundamentals of Unicult. We are talking today about something higher. That chapter is on page 109. We are almost done with this book. I'm going to use this non-winning lottery ticket that I attempted to fund Uniacres with. I thought, might as well try. It didn't work. That's okay. It's working as a bookmark. It's a $3 bookmark. That's how much. Bookmarks are like $5. So I'm working smart here, not hard. Okay, so today's chapter is Something Higher. This is in Fundamentals of Unicult, page 109. If you have the book, we will be reading from the book a little bit. But first, I want to talk about what does it mean to have something higher. I actually ended up talking. I was at a few parties yesterday, and I ended up talking to a lot of people about. People say, "What is the main tenets of Unicult?" And I say, Unicult believes that we are all one. Unicult believes that we can heal evil. Unicult believes that we can, that belief makes things real. And also that believing in something higher is a natural desire and need for humanity. And that is what we're talking about today. What is something higher and why is it important? I recently started doing 12-step for addiction recovery. And one of the reasons why I was avoiding 12-step in all my life, and I had a lot of criticism about it or like hesitancy about 12-step programs, is because the people in 12-step programs seem kind of God crazy. I had a friend in high school who was addicted to meth, and it's actually a longer story than that. He was one of my best friends, and we held hands one day, and he asked me out, and I said no. And then he dated someone else, and the girl he dated ended up being into methamphetamines. And so he got into methamphetamines. I always felt a little guilty about that, but you can't just date someone to make sure that they don't ever do methamphetamines. So he was dating this girl and got into meth, and I saw him at one point, and he was whacked out on meth, and he's like, I drive, looking in the rearview mirror, and I run through red lights all the time because I don't know what's real, and the shadow people are always chasing me. That's why I have to look behind me all the time, and I can see them in the trees, and they're very real. Like the shadow people are very real. And he was just telling me all these things about driving through red lights and always having to look over his shoulders. And he was very jumpy. And I was like, wow, this guy's fucked on meth. And then I saw him about a year later after he had gone through a 12-step program. And he was like, God is the answer. God is the only thing that is real. God is it. God, you just have to believe in God. Like, praise Jesus Christ. And I was like, whoa, like this guy is whacked out on religion. He went from being whacked out on meth to being whacked out on religion. And I was very judgmental, and I was very critical of that circumstance. So I was like, that experience made me a little wary of 12-step programs. And I did an Al-Anon, I have a parent who's an addict, so I did an Al-Anon meeting one time, and I found everybody to be a little too sad. I wasn't ready to confront my trauma, I wasn't ready to confront the pain of what had happened, and I was covering up my my pain, and that's what addicts do. And I think addiction has a lot to do with something higher, because what addiction is just like a more extreme version of what we all go through. Even if you don't, I think everybody has addictions to some things or other things, but if you have trauma, you're more likely to have an addiction. And addiction is really just an exaggerated coping mechanism that, and all of us have different kinds of coping mechanisms. And so why is God so important in 12-step programs? And it took me until I was on my own knees with my own addiction, and I had to enter the 12-step program, the rooms. And I had to start investigating the feelings that I had about my powerlessness. And that's one of the main steps, is that you admit that you're powerless. I think it's the first step. You admit that you're powerless against your addiction. And nobody, it just sounds like such a shitty thing to admit. Nobody wants, who the hell wants to be told that they're powerless? Who the hell wants to admit that they're powerless or start anything being like, yes, I would like to start this process by admitting that I'm powerless. My addiction was to sex and love. So I'm a sex and love addict. And I'm not a girl. Thank you. I did not resonate with this idea of powerlessness. And it was only through going through the steps of the 12-step program and being in the rooms and the meetings and hearing and learning about addiction and realizing that it's all trauma, is that the root of addiction and the root of a lot of our pain is this idea that we know best, is this idea that we are in control of our lives, and is this idea that if we do things in a certain way, we can avoid pain or we can get what we want. And the truth is that I don't think free will really exists. Free will exists, but like, we don't have the ability to change many of the things that happen to us. We don't have the ability to change many of the circumstances of our lives. And in many ways, we are truly, 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 truly powerless. And I didn't like the idea that we were powerless over our addiction, because to me that sounded like at any point this addiction could, take over our lives, and there we have no ability to overcome the addiction. And I don't think that, and it can be interpreted a lot of different ways, but that's not how I interpret it. How I interpret powerlessness is the fact that, and we have a t-shirt that says this, that I'm God's bitch. And when I say I'm God's bitch, I mean that I have to submit my perception of my own power to a greater power. I have to let go of this idea that I can control other people, that I can control my life, that I can control my circumstances, and that I can actually find peace through controlling my circumstances. Because you cannot control your circumstances, and if you try to control them, you will only get further and further and further away from peace. This is the idea that we should always do things and think about your motivation for everything that you do. Why do you work? Why do you try to be in relationships? Why do you seek after goals? It's usually because in the back of your head, you're thinking, if I get this thing, if I finally reach this point in time, I will have peace. If I get this instrument, if I get this girl, if I finally have this, if I finally get married, I will finally be at peace. And that's what we're always chasing, is this feeling of peace, because we're agitated, we're uncomfortable, we don't feel like we're good enough, we have these insecurities, and so we think, if I have this external thing, if I have that external thing, then I will have peace. And that is the attempt to control your life. That is your attempt to exert power over your reality. And that path will never lead you to peace. True peace comes from surrender. True peace comes from letting go and seeing the world as a dream, and finding the peace and love and everything that you need inside yourself. And when I say inside yourself, I point to my third eye and my heart, because it is a higher chakra understanding of nourishment, and it is a higher chakra understanding of fulfillment. So as you're chasing after these external realities, and as you're trying to exert power, and you just say, why doesn't this person love me? Or why didn't I get that job? Or why am I not appreciated in my career? And I used to cry on the floor about all these things. I used to just piteously cry. And there's so many times I've been on the floor crying, like I have done everything I can to make this work. And I know I'm supposed to have it. So why can't I make it work? And I take that shame and I take that guilt and I use it to feed even more insecurity about myself. And I say, I guess I'm not worth anything. But the truth is that you are worth everything. And your attempts to control the world don't work out because they're not meant to. Because you can't see from the highest vantage point. So we have a lot to talk about in this sermon. But the first thing I want to talk about is this caveat of what is higher and what is lower. And it's really important that we understand, as you expand your mind, as you get a bigger vantage point, a more developed nervous system to feel all the different feelings of reality and to expand your consciousness to incorporate the darkness and the light, you start to see that truly everything is divine. Truly there is no good or evil in the biggest possible picture. That takes a lot of for some people drugs, for some people meditation to see that truth. And we don't have to get to that point, but I want to acknowledge the fact that if I say higher and I say lower energy, I'm not talking about good or evil or, there's only one right way and one wrong way. I'm talking about an expanded view. I'm talking about more information. I'm talking about a higher vantage point. And I like to describe this by, if you see an argument on the street and it's busy and somebody knocks into you and you get all frustrated and you want to emotionally react, versus if you're up on the 50th floor of a skyscraper and you see the bustling street, you're not going to be reacting as much because you're going to see the bigger picture. You're going to have distance from it, and you're going to be able to see, oh, that person was in a hurry because this person did that and this person did that, and you actually you have more information, you have a better landscape. So when I say higher energy, I just mean more information. I mean, I literally think of it as being in a skyscraper or being in the sky and looking down and being like, oh, I understand. And yeah, no good or evil, that, like I said, that's not what this sermon's about. I'm not going to go into that. And it's a certain level of understanding that you can accomplish. It's not always the most useful on earth. In Unicult specifically, we do have a duality morality. We don't really ascribe to duality in most cases, but we do hold the duality morality of beneficial and detrimental. So we don't really focus on good or evil, or, we see that a lot of evil comes from pain, but we look at things and we say, was that beneficial or was that detrimental? And from that place, we have our moral alignment, because on earth, it is very important to have a morality. Even if I say, good and evil don't exist, that's true, but your own soul exists, your own emotional body exists, and you need to learn how to navigate the beneficial energy or the negative energy that is happening inside your own consciousness, inside your own body. And of course, most of us have the internal compass that we want to maximize our beneficial energy and minimize our detrimental energy. Let's read from the book. Spirituality is a fundamental component of humanity. No matter your relationship to the divine, you have one. Even if you believe in nothingness, then nothingness is your concept of the divine. Even having an atheist or agnostic mindset is a form of spiritual expression. The idea of something higher is a free-form concept that exists to satisfy the spiritual aspect of each person. It is good to recognize this relationship and imagine the best possible reality. So I love this argument that I came up with, which is that all humans are spiritual. All humans have a spirituality. Your spirituality might be science, and that might be what you believe in. Spirituality is a synonym with the word paradigm. Your story about who you are, what power you have, and what power other people have over you is a story that we play out in our heads. And that story is a narrative that informs us and that creates our own insecurity or security or feelings of power or feelings of powerlessness or whatever. I had a coworker once tell me this story. He went on a beautiful hike with his sister, and they got to go up on this mountain, and they went up there, and everybody they met was so nice, and the sun was out, but it wasn't too hot, and they saw some cool animals, and he just thought it was the most amazing hike. And they got to the top, and she was miserable. And she was like, I hate this. I don't the sun, and I don't like all these animals, and it's dusty. And her version of the same hike was negative, and his version of the hike was super positive. This is just a small example of how you can look at the world and the same thing can happen to you, to multiple different people, and you can have a different reaction to it. You can choose how to react to this energy. The belief in something higher, the idea of faith, the idea that there is a God, the idea that there is a plan, the idea that there is that the universe is working in your favor rather than not in your favor. These are stories that we get to tell ourselves. These are stories that we get to believe about the world. If you believe in a universe that has no care for you, that disregards you, that hates you, that wants to punish you, you have a God that just wants you to be miserable and you don't even know why, you're creating a detrimental reality for yourself. I'm assuming. I'm not you, and I can't tell you what is good in your mind and what is bad in your mind. That is up to you. And that's where Unicult is different from other religions. Because I am giving you the keys. I am handing you the keys to the Ferrari of your own mind. And I'm saying, listen, you get to choose whatever you want to believe. And anytime that you're freaking yourself out with fear, anytime you're freaking yourself out with insecurity, anytime that you're creating a narrative that is detrimental to yourself, you're simply shooting your own self in the leg, and you're preventing yourself from experiencing the most expanded reality. Joy leads to peace. And in Unicult, our goal is to create near constant joy through radical self-love. Near constant joy comes from following the truth of our own heart and learning how to distinguish between things that make us feel good and things that don't make us feel good. In Unicult, we say, if you can't prove something, you might as well believe whatever it is you want to believe. We don't know what happens after death. If you think you're going to go to hell and you're so scared about it and you like cry all the time, or you think like, if you know, there's a lot of Christians who are so sad that like their families are going to go to hell, and they just like guilt trip them all the time, and they ruin their family relationships over this comprehension that they have about the afterlife. You can't prove that. So why do you believe something that is making your life miserable? Why are you aligning your energy with a thought form that is destroying your relationships and that is making you feel scared and small and unhappy? We cannot prove what happens after death. Maybe you just die. Maybe you feel like that's the most realistic thing that could possibly happen. But how could you know that? How could you possibly know that? It's so arrogant to assume that you know anything that happens after death. We are all in the dark here. And so the idea that like the universe, yeah, we have these scientific stories that we tell ourselves about how the universe was created and what the universe is made of and how it operates. And that universal story, universal as in global with Earth, the understanding of what we think we know is backed up by observations about the universe. But what would happen if we had a different story? If we had a different story, we could also back that story up with observations of the universe. So as we look at these things, which, yes, maybe they're even observable, maybe they're not observable. As we look at these things that are unexplainable, as we look at all of reality, and we look at our paradigm, that is how we see the world and the stories that we tell ourselves about the world, we realize that we have immense opportunity to expand our consciousness to believe in something higher. Something higher is faith. Something higher is hope. Something higher is divinity. Something higher is divine guidance. Something higher is eternal comfort. Something higher is eternal life. However you want to conceptualize of these ideas, you are allowed to conceptualize of them. Nobody's here telling you that you have to believe things that make you feel miserable. Your energetic state is the most real reality that exists in this world. Your energetic state is more important than physical reality. Physical reality impacts your energetic state, but when you look back on your life, The thing, after you die, the thing that lives on is not any physical accomplishments. It's the energetic imprint in the time-space continuum. Your energetic body, that is your amount of joy, is eternal. And it's ringing out through all of time. So how you feel in each moment is the most important thing that we can focus on. How you feel in each moment is more important than anything else in this reality. Your own feeling state, your own happiness, your own fulfillment, your own security, your own nourishment is what creates a resonance around yourself of safety and comfort and support for yourself and for other people and for society as a whole. Your belief in a hopeful future. We don't know what the future is going to be like. You can believe whatever you want. Yes, there are many facts that things are falling apart, but that can also be a good thing. I'm not saying to not be aware. I'm saying to write a story about your reality that makes sense. And when I say makes sense, I mean makes you feel good, makes you feel happy, makes you feel excited to be alive. Your paradigm is your truth. Your spirituality is the story that you tell yourself about the meaning that you have in this world. Your spirituality is a story that you tell yourself about your meaning and the impact that you have in the universe. Who you are is all that you have. You are the most important person in this world. You are the most important person in this world. You are. And if you can realize that with a sense of humility, you can find the most incredible nourishment that you've ever known. Why do we think of God as this vengeful, mean, manipulative, abandoning, cruel man in the sky? For one thing, we think of God that way because of Christianity and the paradigm, the overarching paradigm that we've been led to believe is true, and we haven't been told that we can look inside our own mind and our own heart and determine what divinity is. We've been told what divinity is, which is not divinity. If someone tells you what divinity is, then that's not divinity, because it might not be divinity to you. And what's divinity to you is a specific, unique expression of your own higher self and how it expands into the highest reality. And as we open our mind up to conceptualize of something higher, we actually create a more complete something higher. We actually feed into the energy of the divine. What was I saying? As you are exploring these concepts of divinity, you just have to find, what is it that makes you feel good? What is it that resonates with you? Oh yeah, why do we believe that God is this vengeful, mean, manipulative, cruel, abandoning energy? It's because our parents were. We literally see God like we see our parents. Kuan Yin just enlightened me to this a few days ago. And it's brilliant because as we are children and our parents are not attuned to us, which most people do not have parents who were attuned, we felt constantly misunderstood, constantly abandoned. And even if your parents weren't intentionally cruel or intentionally abusive or anything like that, most parents are not fully attuned to their children. And so there's this feeling of isolation and of misunderstanding that almost all of us have because of how we were raised, because of our parents' trauma, which then incurred trauma in us, because of their parents' trauma, which incurred trauma in them, etc., etc. So as we acknowledge these feelings we have about an unjust God, as we acknowledge these feelings that God is cruel, or that, that we're here for some prison planet punishment situation, if you have those feelings, again, you can't prove any of these things, and this is just a story. And yes, you might be pointing at specific circumstances. You might say, well, this bad thing happened to me and this bad thing happened to me, and I feel like I'm being punished, so I think I'm being punished. And we have to have the humility to realize that we do not know enough about the full picture of reality to make any kind of judgment call. And we have to allow ourselves to recognize that we might not know what is best for ourselves. When I look back, and this is an extreme thing to say because I've had a lot of fucking trauma, but when I look back at all of the trauma I've had in my life, whether it be because I was an infant or when I was a child or when I was a teenager or all the violence I've incurred at the hands of men, I look back at it and I say, I see why that happened. I see why that happened energetically. I see why that happened in my life. I see why that happened to help my soul grow. I see why that happened so that I can have more empathy for people who are harming people or for people who are harmed. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I think that it was the best thing for me to experience. Because I wouldn't exist right now in the same way that I exist if those things hadn't happened to me. So how can I sit here and say those were bad things that happened to me? Yeah, they gave me trauma. Yeah, they fucking hurt. Yeah, they put me into a world of tortured pain and made me want to kill myself. Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, it made me who I am today. And it expanded my mind to this place where I see a larger percentage of reality because of it. I'm not saying that you have to see your trauma in this way. I'm saying that you have the freedom to look at your life, to recognize your powerlessness, with regards to the circumstances that you were born into, with regards to the things that have happened to you, and to tell yourself the best possible story about it. And as we tell ourselves these positive stories, as we tell ourselves these stories of love, of support, of divine guidance, of purposefulness, we ascend into a place of true peace. And there is nothing better in this world than being able to accomplish the feeling of true peace. If you have trauma and you have addiction, you are always chasing these things that you think are going to make you feel peaceful, and they never do. But if you rewrite your story and you surrender to something higher, it literally doesn't matter what it is. You have the ability to finally feel peace. And I created Unicult with the idea that joy is the highest emotion and that joy is the highest possible thing that you can find. And joy should always be chased in the sense of trying to find joy as your compass. But after joy, after you listen to your true heart enough and you use your imagination to write these narratives about a nourishing reality, then you can accomplish something even higher, which is peace. And true peace is the greatest gift that I have ever been given in my spiritual journey or anywhere. And it only comes through surrender. So I believe that Unicult was created as a structure of logic, okay? And Unicult has the path to joy, and it's very logical. It's solid logic. Like, you cannot argue with all of the concepts. And you get to this point where you understand the concepts of Unicult, and you connect to other people with unconditional love because you're connecting to yourself with unconditional love, and you learn how to find joy in your own heart, and you learn how to listen to your heart, okay? And you get to the top of this logical thought form that is Unicult. And what's at the top? At the top, you have to make the leap out of logic and into the insane, which is faith. Faith in the unseen, faith in the unknown, faith in the universe. And you have to make the leap out of the logic into the divine, into the trust in the universe. And when you make that leap and you just finally are like, okay, I trust the universe, that's where you find true peace. And that comes through believing and having a paradigm that the universe is safe. Through having a paradigm that God or something higher or the spirit of uni or whatever you believe in is there and gonna catch you, and everything is gonna be okay, and that this life isn't even real, and that life is eternal, and that everything's gonna be okay, and that it's all happening for the grandest possible reason you can't even comprehend. Maybe none of that's true. It doesn't fucking matter. Because the feeling state inside your body, if you can get to the point where you believe that the universe is like loving and trustworthy, is worth believing anything. Because that's the most real thing. If you can cultivate a real feeling with a made up thought, then maybe that thought has more truth than we realize. Something higher can be anything. It can be a flying spaghetti monster. It can be a man in the sky. It can be Black Jesus. It can be SpongeBob SquarePants. It literally doesn't matter. You can imagine anything you want to imagine. As long as that entity has a more expanded vantage point than you, as you conceptualize of having a more expanded vantage point, you allow for the energy of expansion to come into your life. The more time you spend connecting with angels, with aliens, with God, with something higher, the more you are expanding your own consciousness because you are aligning your energy with something higher. You're aligning your energy with God and with the truth of reality. Let's see what else the book says. I need to get some like glue or something here. Each unique person has a connection with their true heart, higher self, and the higher universe. To insist that each person should connect with these things in the exact same way is limiting and damaging. Expressions of spiritual connection should always be freely identified by each and every person based on their own whims and joy. By allowing the freedom of connection to something higher, we inspire all hearts to be as fulfilled as possible. We also increase the complexity of divinity on this planet, which will in turn bring us closer to divinity. Other people's experience of or depiction or description of something higher can open us up to something similar. It is perfectly okay to take alternative inspiration from other sources, whether they are religious, ideologies, or sci-fi stories. Never feel shame or embarrassment or guilt for your connection to the divinity, because your unique connection to divinity is sacred and holy. Something higher can be anything that you imagine it to be. Ideas of joy are obviously more beneficial to you in the world. By focusing your attention on something higher, you automatically raise yourself up in ways you otherwise couldn't. Prayer, meditation, contemplation, conversation, and art are all ways to give your attention to something higher. The more time you spend dedicated to this practice, the more magic you will see flow into your life. This is because your something higher is truly you, in the sense that you are channeling the highest energy that you can conceive of. By doing so, you are progressing into a more beneficial life. So why do you need God or something higher with addiction? It's because we are, as addicts or as, I really think we all have addiction in some degree or another. As flawed humans who think we know how to control reality, we fight and we fight and we fight and we fight and we fight against the happenings against God's plan. When things happen, we say, oh, this is a terrible thing, and then we cry. But then later we're like, oh, thank God that happened, and we don't always feel that way, but a lot of times we do. So as we are learning how to surrender and realize that we are powerless, we need that power to come into our lives from a more aware, more loving, more expanded vantage point to help guide us navigate through this reality. There's a book called, what is it called? A Course in Miracles. If you can stomach the word God, and if you can stomach God being called He, which I know is asking a lot, this book is a wonderful, wonderful explanation. It's a logical explanation of why God is good and why you can trust God and why you can trust the universe. And it's just a description of the ego and the things that the ego does to us, and that logical spiraling negative thinking. And it's just a really good way to root yourself in a trusting paradigm is to read that book. It's called A Course in Miracles. I recommend that book. Again, they do use the word God. Not everybody resonates with that word. They do gender God as male, which is, but other than that, it's a fantastic book. There's also a pretty good story about I think it's a Confucian tale of a farmer, and I'm not going to remember the whole story, but basically he gets this horse, and what happens? Okay, his horse runs away, and his neighbor comes by, and he says, what a terrible thing that happens. And the farmer says, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I actually don't know. And the neighbor's like, that's a weird thing to say. Like, it's obviously a bad thing. Your horse ran away. But then the horse comes back with a girlfriend, and the farmer now has 2 horses. So, how could he have thought it was a bad thing? And then his son is going to ride the new horse, but he falls and breaks his leg. And the neighbor comes by and says, oh, what a terrible thing that happened to your son. And the guy says, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. And the neighbor again's like, you're a wacko. And then they come and they're trying to recruit people for the new war or whatever, and the son can't go because he has a broken leg. These are just some of the ways, it's just a cute little story about how we really can't tell if something is in our favor or not. We do not have the perspective to truly make an assessment on whether something is going to end up good for us or bad for us in the long run. And I truly believe, and I'm here saying this because I truly believe it, is that the universe really is an amazing, incredible quantum cosmic computer that is actually working in the good of all at all points in time. And I think that even as we have bad things happen to us, when we wake up from this life, I think we're like, whoa, that was kind of crazy. And we don't have an attachment to it. So how can we find that non-attachment in this life? How can we be cool as a cucumber and let things roll off us and also protect ourselves still? But just allow for life to happen. And how can we find peace and trust no matter what happens? It is only through trusting in something higher. Thank you for coming to Camp Church. It is my honor to be here with you. Thank you for your attention. We are close to finishing the book, and please keep coming back to Camp Church, 10 a.m. on Sundays, and we'll let you know what happens after we finish the book. We might have some new things coming your way. Thank you so much. Go ahead, if you're an official member of Unicult, go ahead and go on over to the Discord server, and you can join us for Uni Brunch. And new member welcome. If you're a new member especially, we'd love to welcome you. Let's do a closing prayer. Spirit of Uni, thank you for all of these beautiful souls who are here today, having their emotional, intelligent reactions to what I am saying, processing this information in whatever way helps them grow and helps them become a happier, more healthy human being so that we can all create a more hopeful future. We are praying that we are all guided and fulfilled by any conceptions of divinity that serve us. We are praying for higher energy to infuse our lives, to give us that inner peace that we deserve. Uni bless. Uni bless. Uni bless.